My name's Sam McManus, the founder of YellowWood Adventures, and over the next 30 minutes or so, I'll be taking through a presentation of northern Spain. So this is a very personal presentation for me, I'd say, because I lived in the region for about 9 months during the pandemic. So you can see here it's broken up into different provinces: Galicia, Asturias, Cantabria, Escadi, which is the Basque Country, as many of you will know, and the Picos de Europa are found right slap bang in the middle of those. So during the pandemic, sorry, this map isn't very good quality, but you can get an idea. I saw very quickly that my business was going to be in trouble, so to speak, because of what was happening. And I said, you know what, because I love to travel, I'm not going to stay in London and sit through a global pandemic. And I flew to Costa Rica 2 days before they shut the border. So I spent the first 5 months of the pandemic in Costa Rica. That's a whole different story. And then the first available flight back to the UK I took, and came back and realized that actually things weren't going to be okay by Christmas. They were going to be tough for a while. And I said, you know what, I can work from anywhere. And I got in my Land Rover and I went to northern Spain, and I ended up living there for 9 months during the pandemic. And I lived, if you can see the map here, in a little town called Llanes, which is in the province of Asturias. Don't worry, I'll come back to this map here. This is showing one of the routes that we do for our Northern Spain cultural tour, historic cities and foothills of Northern Spain. So I got in my Batmobile that you can see here, the YellowWood Land Rover, and you can actually take a ferry, which is great, from Portsmouth to either Bilbao or Santander. And I just went and showed up. I landed in Santander. I didn't have much of a plan, really. But Santander is a very beautiful city on the north. The north of Spain feels very different to the south. It's much greener. I'll go into some details about the Picos de Europa, but they're, sheer mountains that come right up to the coastline. And, a lot of the weather systems from Northern Europe, those clouds will hit those mountains, dump all their precipitation and rain. So it's very, very green in the north. And they get a lot of snow in the winter. And that's why, a lot of the rainfall doesn't get any further than the northern coastline, and which is then when you get the sort of dry frying pan of the rest of Spain. And so Santander, you can see all the mountains in the background. It's a beautiful coastal city. Immediately you've come across the Bare Biscay. And for those of you that know Spain, you're just in Spain immediately. The food's wonderful, the wine's wonderful, the tapas is cheap, it's delicious everywhere you go. People take their time to talk to you. You have that later night bar culture. And it's just great. But I knew I wanted to go and stay somewhere more rural. So I didn't stay in Santander, although I did used to come back and visit, and there's lots of beautiful things to see. But I really wanted to get into the next this is in Cantabria. I wanted to get into Asturias. So I drove west, as you can see, along this northern coastline, through Comillas to Llanes. Comillas is famous for some famous Gaudi architecture. Obviously his most famous contribution is the cathedral in Barcelona, but he's created some beautiful, slightly weird architecture in that small town. But Llanes, I just got to, and I didn't plan to stay in Llanes. I just landed there, and it's a tiny seaside town, but it's just absolutely beautiful. It's nestled directly between the Picos de Europa mountain range and the coast. It's I actually found a little cottage to rent, which is just outside of Llanes, in a bit closer to the mountains, called Picos de Llanes. And this was the view from my cottage. And, you know, here that you can see the Picos de Europa. So this mountain range, you know, most people, not that many people have heard of them actually, which is interesting. But in Spanish, Picos de Europa means peaks of Europe. Historically, a lot of the Spanish conquistadores, when they were going to the Americas, the New World, they would often set off from northern Spain, and then go down to the Canary Islands, where I am at the moment, and then go along to the New World, and then they would often come back that way as well. And when they brought some of the indigenous peoples or indios from the New World, from Latin America, the first thing they would see as they hit the northern Spanish coastline was the peaks, these mountains that come up to the coast, and they named them Los Picos de Europa because it was the first thing they saw of Europe. They called them the peaks of Europe. So as I said, you know, get heavy snow in the wintertime, but it's just breathtakingly natural beauty in this area. Asturias is kind of feels like a little hidden kingdom that's been lost to time. It's extremely rugged, rural, but very, very beautiful place. This is the family that lived next door to me. I became, you know, close friends with them. Obviously, this was during a pandemic, but so the rules were relaxed a little bit, and so we ended up spending Christmas together. This was a little bit later on after I arrived, and we sort of built a better a stronger relationship. But you can see the kind of food here in the region. These are called, on the right, mariscos, and you know, gambas here, and paella, seafood paella, all different types of wine and foods. We dressed up and had a pretty excellent time actually, and I'm still in close contact with this family, and they remain very close friends in that I speak quite good Spanish, but they're just very hospitable, lovely people. And so coming to the Picos de Europa, we run a couple of hiking tours through the mountains, but you don't have to, you know, be a good hiker. You know, the full itineraries of these are on our website. I won't go into all the details of them now. I'd rather tell you a bit more about the region. But you can, you know, on our culture tour is actually a bit more popular because you can get into the Picos without having to hike. But when I went there, you know, this is called Naranjo de Bulnes, which means the orange tree. El Naranjo means the orange tree of Bulnes, because this beautiful tower, when it captures the sunset, the sort of orangey color of it makes it shine a bright orange. We did lots of hiking up into the mountains here. The first time I was there, I just joined the local tour company who we've partnered with ever since, and just went up with some all Spanish clients then, because only really national tourism was popular during the pandemic. But as you can see, the mountains are, you know, breathtakingly beautiful. We stayed in the refugios here. They actually helicopter up big barrels of beer, which is great because it means you can have nice food and have a glass of beer after hiking, which is pretty fun. I actually recorded some footage on my GoPro at the time, and I'll just play this short movie for you now, which is my experience of hiking. So that just gives you a short idea of what the mountains like, which is great. You might have seen towards the end our mountain guide there. He poured a drink which was sidra, which is the local cider. But you'll notice he held the bottle above his head, and the glass at his hip. They do that because they don't oxygenate the cider with gas, so that when they pour it in a very long pour and just a small amount each time into your glass to fill the cider with oxygen and give it a natural fizz. And they make all the sidra from apples in the local region, which is lovely. And so, you know, my life in Asturias began. I spent a lot of time, you know, just driving up into the mountains, walking by myself or with friends I made, and just really came to genuinely love the region. It's a very special place. It's very rural, so this is a farming friend of mine. You know, lots of natural farmland and cows and sheep and goats, and lots of dairy products as a result. So Asturian cheese and milk is very famous. Here in the Canary Islands, when I buy some milk, it nearly always comes from Asturias. And here you can see they keep their quesos, their cheese in the caves, much like in the UK, Cheddar Gorge is famous for storing cheddar in the caves. In this part of northern Spain, there's loads of natural caves in the mountains, and because it's cool and damp, they use it to store their cheese. And the cheese in northern Spain is absolutely wonderful. It's as stinky and as strong as you like. The region's also famous for surfing, so I took a couple of surfboards there. It's not as you know, I wouldn't say it was world-class waves, not compared to Costa Rica, for example, where I'd been living previously. But the beaches are beautiful. You can definitely get some good surf, which is always fun. This is a hunter friend of mine, and we used to drive over the mountains in the winter into Leon as well to explore from Asturias. And actually in the wintertime, there's several ski resorts that open in the Picos de Europa as well. So there really is just a huge amount to do in the region. And as I said, until I went there, I certainly didn't have an idea of just how many activities there were. So this beautiful picture here is a photo of Covadonga Cathedral. So the history of northern Spain, and Asturias in particular, is very unique. So many of you will know southern Spain and how the Moors, the Islamic Berbers tribes came up from northern Africa and were able to conquer southern Spain. Granada was conquered, for example, for 1,000 years, where they built the Alhambra. And you know, the Islamic hordes, when they came out from Saudi Arabia originally, came into North Africa, eventually came to southern Spain, and they pushed all the way up into northern Spain. But they never conquered the north. I mean, they got to within, you know, a hair's breadth of the ocean. But in the Picos de Europa, there was a King Pelayo, and there's a statue of him at this cathedral at Covadonga, started to fight back. So the Christians would throw rocks down from the mountains to the invading Islamic armies, and King Pelayo managed to push them back, and generations after him pushed the Islamic armies and rulers, the caliphs, down and down back to the coast of southern Spain, and eventually expelled them from Spain. And that's known as the Reconquista. So they built this cathedral in the valley where King Pelayo started to fight back, or so the legend goes at any rate. And actually, Pelayo is probably the most popular name in the region. You know, every second boy in every village is called Pelayo in memory of that famous man. From Covadonga, you can go up into the Picos. There's loads of beautiful lakes. We take our tours go up here, and you can walk around them. Very, very peaceful. There's small mountain towns. This one's known as Sotres, that you can visit. It's very idyllic place. Moving on from Llanes as well, you can cross back into Cantabria up to Potes. There's the Fuente de Teleférico, the cable car, which can take you up to the mountains. If you're not much of a hiker, you can still take in some stunning views from the Picos. And everywhere just has this sort of rustic, medieval feel to it. You know, you don't get a bad meal anywhere. The food's incredible. The wine, the cider, the people, it's friendly. This is a beautiful medieval church that's been here for centuries at Canga de Onis. It just hasn't changed that much, really, in 1,000 years. It's really quite something. So I lived in Llanes, but I went and because Llanes was quite a small spot, I spent a lot of my time in Oviedo. So Oviedo is the capital of the Asturias region, and I'd say it was really my favorite city of all of them. You can see here, it's nestled, it's further inland, it's not right on the coast. Again, it's in and you know, hop, skip, and a jump away from the mountains. But again, it's just got this sort of lazy, magical, historic feel to it. This square you can see here, everyone always comes out to have a drink or a martini or vermouth. And every Sunday they would have a, not a boot fair, but sort of a marketplace to sell secondhand goods, which I just found fascinating, just to see what the Spanish were selling. And I always used to come here. You can see it's just absolutely beautiful. That's the cathedral there. And because there were lots of wealth was brought back from Latin America, South America, there's incredible gold ornamentation inside the cathedral. And the north of Spain is actually very wealthy as a result of that. You know, historically, that wealth has been passed down from generation to generation, especially in Bilbao and surrounding areas. There's a lot of industry. They build trains. So northern Spain is actually, you know, when you go to Andalusia, you can feel a lot of poverty and the gitanos, and the food's much simpler. The north is richer in some ways culturally and definitely economically. Coming onto the food, I mean, Oviedo is just an absolute, you know, perfect example of a gastronomic city. As I said, you can't get a bad meal. You've got the gambas, the prawns, paella. Fabada is a very famous sort of thick, meaty chorizo-based soup. Really good winter food with lots of beans. The sauce from the chorizo melts into everything else. Cachopo, which, you know, you can't really eat a full cachopo and maintain self-respect at the end of it. It's veal with cheese, deep fried in like a batter. And it's always with chips. It's enormous. You know, you have to be really hungry to eat one of these. It's actually better shared with friends. There's local wine from Roble, pulpo, which is octopus. It's just fantastic. Oh yeah, here's an image of the sidra I was mentioning, where the waiters will come and oxidize it for you because it's just naturally bottled. A good friend of mine, Carmen, she's actually a food business consultant. She's based in Oviedo. If you're on Instagram, please do follow her at GDE Gastronomia. She's a professional when it comes to Spanish food. So if you're interested in the subject, you know, it is in Spanish, but you can follow that for some inspiration from meals and so on. And these are some personal photos I took. I'd often just love to go and sit there and work remotely and chat to people. Oviedo, you can see here's just one of the courtyards. It's just a lovely place to be. Yeah, and there's a photo of the cathedral. So yeah, just a stone's throw outside of Oviedo. Once you come into the Picos, there's FAPAS, which is Fundación por los Animales Salvajes, Foundation for the Protection of Wild Animals. They are a local charity that YellowWood partners with, and we take our clients to go and visit them. They do really great work because there's a population of 300 brown bears in the Picos de Europa. And when I was there, I was working with these gentlemen. They were clearing a disused finca out in the mountains, you can see here, and planting 300 fruit trees, which serve as a natural food source for the brown bear population, because they noticed that the brown bears were starting to encroach into orchard or people's gardens. They were getting hungry. So they're helping to maintain the population by providing natural food sources. In Asturias, the southern coastal city is called Gijón. Very pretty, good surfer town, good fun. You can see here, really good old town section of the market. Zamburinas, which are clams, are really local delicacy here. It's so funny because Gijón and Asturias, they're probably about a 20-minute drive from each other. The local people absolutely hate each other. Oviedo is considered sort of aristocratic, upper class. Gijón is a bit more blue collar, a bit more people working the docks, but it's so interesting to see that natural feud, that even though they live in the same region, they have an intense rivalry between the two cities. Somewhere that shouldn't be missed in Asturias on the coast is a much smaller little fishing village called Curiero. As you can see here, beautiful little spot, very higgledy-piggledy houses. It's just a fisherman's town, but the food is really out of this world. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, here's a couple of local guys, Midoli and Irene, who lead our tours. Although I spend a lot of time in Spain and love to go back, all of the local guides we use are from the region and live there. And obviously they're best placed to tell you more about their local culture and everything. So yeah, please do bear that in mind if you do take a tour with us. So coming back east from Asturias, come back into Cantabria, Bilbao. Really pretty much larger scale city. As I said, a lot more industry going on, most famous for the Guggenheim Museum. Our clients love to go there. Here's a few snaps from clients that they've taken. All sorts of weird and wonderful things there. Further along, as you come along the coast, traveling east to the Basque Country, you've got this weird and wonderful architecture that you can walk along the coast out here and explore the coastline. We do include some walks in our northern Spain tour. The hiking trips are very separate and are graded accordingly. Here you can walk as little or as much as you want, and our local guides will always tailor the amount of walking to the trippers. To the group's wishes and capabilities as much as possible. So please don't be put off when you see walking opportunities on our trips. Coming further east along the Samayan coast, YellowWood's very famous surf town, as you can see here, very famous for its waves and very beautiful surroundings. And then obviously we're finishing with the jewel in the crown, which is San Sebastian. So now, I didn't know this at the time, where I was living in Llanes is sort of where the modern day ricos or the sort of wealthy of Madrid will come in the summer when it's really, really hot to sort of spend some time and see friends, and there's nice shops and they'll have holiday homes or rent Airbnbs and things like that. Historically, San Sebastian was where the Spanish monarchy would come during the hot summer months. So the court would move from Madrid to San Sebastian, and as a result, San Sebastian is, well, I'd say it was the jewel in the crown of Spain in many ways, architecturally, gastronomically, because of that, historical link to the monarchy. It's just had so much wealth and culture and international connections poured into it. It's obviously very close to France and the Pyrenees as well. it's just an incredible place. It looks like a mini Rio de Janeiro. I know for a fact in Spain, it's the most expensive place if you want to buy property. It really is something else. You know, the pinchos, which is the name for tapas in this region, you know, San Sebastian again just blows everywhere else out of the water. It's what the region is most famous for. It's the nightlife is incredible. As I said, the architecture and the history is second to none. It's just a fantastic place to finish up our tour of northern Spain. Often clients will add on a few nights to stay here. You can even surf here as well. It's just got a little bit of everything. Not least of all, the wine's fantastic. So I feel like unbelievably, I've almost come to time. I feel like I've probably shoved a lot of information into 30 minutes. I certainly feel like I could do with a glass of wine after this. I don't know about you, but I just wanted to mention when I was living in northern Spain, it was the pandemic, you know, so it wasn't a holiday. It was I did make friends, but actually I spent a lot of time really slowing down. It's the kind of place where it's sort of going back to an older way of life, and you get a lot of time to really just slow down and go back to a sort of more normal pace of life. In that time, you know, I wasn't just sitting on my hands because although my travel business couldn't operate, I was doing some things that we reinvested in the website and launched some new products and things like that. But actually, because I slowed down, I started editing all of my travel writing that I've done over the 6 years up until that point. And I got a professional editor in London. And over the 6 months period, we edited, and then I published my book, which is called Wax and Gold: Journeys in Ethiopia and Other Roads Less Traveled. It also includes trips, travel writing accounts from Mongolia, Oman, Lebanon, and lots of other places. So, you know, I don't think if I'd have been anywhere else, I probably would have written the book. But it was, you know, Spain will always be a special place for me because it allowed me to actually slow down and bring my thoughts together. And if you're interested, you can find the book in Waterstones in the UK or on Amazon in the rest of the world. The link's on our website. If that's something that's of interest, you can